I wanted to, speak on Officer Michael Fanone and Officer Clyde Kerr III. May the latter rest in peace. You know, we're having a conversation in this country about multiple things, all simultaneously. Racism, brutality, choice, autonomy, science, religion, sexuality. The human existence, it spans the gap, and we're having conversations about things. And that's good. Conversations bring, dialogue, and hopefully proper information. But there's a lot of misinformation online, disinformation online. And that's true in the real world too. You have a lot of misinformed people that give ignorant commentary based solely off of, their perspective, not based in any reality, factual, or anything of that nature. No, it's purely based off of, their perception of how, they perceive things. And that's fine. That's all we can go on is our perception of how we perceive things. But there are some things that are truths, that are factual. And I was watching the interview that Officer Michael Fanone gave on MSNBC this morning. And something stood out to me as to what Michael Fanone stated. He stated prior to January 6th, so on January 5th, he felt demoralized as an officer. He felt, that the media had demonized his profession. Local politicians had demonized policing. And, he didn't feel good as far as, doing his job. And then on January 6th, he got the call to, defend the Capitol. And that was just purely his job. So he did it. And thereafter the fact, I think his perception about, the reality of what his job is changed. You see, you can have a job that you do, and your job description, states that you have to do certain things. But they don't align with, what you feel is, right to do in yourself, your identity. See, what's happened generally in the West since the turn of the industrial age is that identity has come second to, what you do in the society. People will lead with that. What is it you do for work? Your whole existence, identity is defined by your, employer and your employment. And we have the police, or policing in general. And policing is a microcosm of the society. That's what Officer Michael Fanone stated. And I agree with that. People from all different types and backgrounds join police forces across our country. Predominantly, it's a male-orientated profession, meaning that there are women in the profession, but in the numbers, percentage-wise to males, it's still a good old boys club. And that's why you have so much toxicity. Any institution or, thing that exists in the society that's not balanced out, you're going to have toxicity and you're going to have problems. And policing has a whole bunch of problems. Now, Officer Michael Fanone mentioned that, you're sworn to take an oath to uphold the Constitution and protect the constituents that you serve and protect. Now, we can debate whether that's happened or not. We all know in the United States of America, and probably other places all over the world, people don't care about human rights. They care about, serving the interests of the people that, pay their salary. If you're in Russia, they kick down your door if you're a YouTube blogger and you blog about corruption, according to what's happened. We all saw it. It was live streamed. That's what the state does. Here, if you happen to be, a person of color in the United States of America, predominantly African American, you're hunted down and you're murdered and lynched by the United States police in this country. It's just a fact. From Amadou Diallo to, Oscar Grant, to George Floyd, to Breonna Taylor, to Sandra Bland, to Tamir Rice, to Walter Scott, to Juan McDaniel, Monique Graves, and the list goes on and on and on. All of those people were, for the most part, unarmed, and they were black citizens of this country who were exterminated and assassinated by the police force in this country, all across America. Now, Officer Michael Fanone states that you shouldn't be able to take an oath to another organization or institution that doesn't abide by your original oath and still be able to serve your community. Meaning that you can have political ideologies, but if you're aligned with the Proud Boys, or the Three Percenters, or Oath Keepers, or the Patriot Front, or any other white nationalist neo-Nazi organization, you can in good faith can say that you're serving and protecting the community in which you're serving. Because there's people from all walks of life in your community who don't ascribe to those values and beliefs. And you are sworn to uphold a law, but you have things at your advantage that the regular citizen does not. You carry a gun with you. A regular citizen is entitled to carry a gun, but there's all types of different stipulations and laws and ordinances in your city that might not permit you to meaningfully carry it at all times, depending on your locality. But you're entrusted with serving and protecting the interests of the citizenry, and so you're given a law-abiding licensed weapon by the state to utilize only when necessary, not to commit extrajudicial murders as a way to brag about it in your off-job site with your white Nazi friends. We know that there's all kinds of police officers in white nationalist gangs that actually operate just like any other gang. They will mark things as marked killings for their gang to join. And some of these white nationalist organizations require that you murder black people in order to join their affiliation. It's a requirement. And we know that police officers are affiliated with those gangs. It's time for the United States government to stop talking and take action. It just has to come to an end. Officer Clyde Kerr III, this summer, was a decorated officer, served honorably in the armed services in this country. But he made a string of videos before he tragically took his life. And he made allegations that policing in America is completely broken. It's highly racist, highly brutal, and it doesn't care about anybody that is serving. And he no longer could in good faith continue on with his duties. Now, you should really listen to what Officer Clyde Kerr III stated about policing in this country. Nobody should be able to justify what Derek Chauvin did with George Floyd. A knee on the neck for 9 minutes and 22 seconds. Nobody should be able to justify that. And yet, many law enforcement officers definitely do justify it. In fact, they praise it. And we know this. But those officers are allowed to stay on, to serve in their communities. They shouldn't be allowed to. They're racist. They're openly racist. And the federal government knows that because they have reports and lists all the way dating back to 2017 with reports from the FBI stating that white supremacists were determined to barrel themselves into law enforcement. And law enforcement doesn't just mean police. It means judges. It means lawyers. All of it. It runs the gamut. We know that they're all in there. We know who they're affiliated with. Believe you me, we know. Now, you're like, what should the government do? It's not a crime to have an ideology or to be affiliated with something. You're absolutely right. You have a right to whatever ideology you want. You can be a neo-Nazi and, well, work at McDonald's or Burger King. But here's the kicker. The state, police, local police, are subsidized by the taxpayers. Citizens, like you and me, who pay their taxes, that's their salary. I shouldn't have to subsidize white supremacy and neo-Nazis because, well, it's convenient and it's easy to hire those type of people. Or those type of people would get into trouble if they didn't have a profession or something to do with their time. No, we shouldn't have to pay for people like that. And we won't pay for people like that anymore. I'm familiar with what the indigenous tribes did, how they require that you don't tax them. I think that those kind of things can be litigated in court for large groups of citizens in this country, where they demand that they no longer pay county, local, and federal taxes to a government who's currently assassinating and lynching them. I think those things can be litigated in court. You see, if your government won't do it, then you as a citizen have to rise up and stand up to this. Because like Clyde Kerr III said, we have to all stand up to this. We all know it's not right, and that's true. We do. Some of us don't want to stand up for what's right because, well, it's not convenient. But silence leads to violence. We've seen that in our history before, and we're seeing it again. Charlottesville in 2017 at the Unite the Right rally, there were a bunch of people who were anti-Semitic, and they were very angry. They were also racist and misogynist. And there were counter-protesters to counter-protest the white Nazis. And well, one of the neo-Nazis, who had military training, I might add, took his car and, well, he rammed it into another person, killing her, feather hair, a counter-protester against, well, the neo-Nazis. See, you have a right to be a neo-Nazi, but you don't have a right to get in your car and, well, purposely kill somebody who's not a neo-Nazi. See, that's the problem. You have a right to your own ideology, but you don't have a right to violence. And we know that these people are prone to violence. We saw it on January 6th. You see, I think part of this is the government is kind of scared of what to do with so many, well, disgruntled white men who are angry and who have military and law enforcement training and who have weapons in this country. Here's what my suggestion would be. You pardon all the people who, well, are in prison for smoking and selling marijuana. And you make room for new people, those type of people. If you can't be a civilized, productive individual in the society, you shouldn't be amongst the society. It's just that simple. It seems to me that all the, well, criminals that are incarcerated are probably saints, and all the, well, sinners are probably the cops. That's a Guns N' Roses line. That's not my line. But it's a true line. And it's probably more factual now than ever before. You know, you have people in prison for doing low-level offenses. If somebody's outside and they're committing violence, and they've shown you prior that they commit violence, they shouldn't be on the police force. And they shouldn't, well, be outside amongst the rest of us. There's officers on every department who have a laundry list of, well, charges alleged against them for brutality. And, well, every day they continue to draw a paycheck. Now I ask you, if in any other profession you could come in and, well, assault your coworkers clients that you're meeting. And well, nothing gets done to you. You continue to draw a paycheck from taxpayers. Would you not be upset about that and wage a complaint? You would. And see, the police are unionized, so any profession that's unionized is hard to get rid of people. I grant it. And well, I don't necessarily have a problem with a union in itself. But police unions are very toxic. They need to be reviewed. And some of those things that are in there about, well, qualified immunity, they should be overturned. And that's why it was important to get the criminal justice reform package, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, that the Senate could not pass. This is why. And so, if the country states that they can't fix this problem, what's going to happen? There's going to be, well, a final culmination of things. And that's not going to look good for the country. It would behoove all of us that, well, the people we task to fix our problems actually do the work to fix them. The fact that the United States Senate could not get a deal on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is a complete and utter embarrassment. And at this point, I think it's up to, well, the executive branch, the president, to do executive orders about this shit. You cannot continue to have this shit happen in our country. I don't care what anybody says. It's a problem. It's a systemic problem, and it needs to be addressed. You know, we saw just the other day in Austin, Texas. Now, Austin, Texas is known for, well, it's known for being a college town. Very liberal, very progressive indeed. And well, what happened? We saw a bunch of men with swastika t-shirts on and hats get up on a bridge and do Nazi salutes. And then they march through all of Austin, making threatening comments about Jewish people. Now, like I said, you're entitled to be a kook in the society. All of that is fine. Well, not really, but it's all, people are entitled to their opinions, no matter how insane they are. But the troubling part was, well, an Austin police officer, he fist bumped one of the gentlemen wearing the swastika t-shirts. Now wait a minute. Here's the issue. Remember, Officer Michael Fanone said that the police are a microcosm of every community with all types of, well, ideologies. And that's fine. But when you're on your job and you're wearing your badge and your uniform and you have a state-issued gun given to you and, well, you're fist-bumping somebody that's, well, spreading a message of hatred and bigotry and violence, then you as a law enforcement officer, you're actually endorsing that message. You see, this is why communities don't trust the police and are calling for the abolition of the police because of shit like that in Austin, Texas. This is why Michael Fanone, well, was having a hard time with morale before January 6th. You can't expect people in the community to trust entirely now the Austin police. I wouldn't. And those people that came here that did that, they might not even live in Austin. They'll go back to where they're from. But those same police officers who were there, fist bumping those men, they'll be patrolling the streets of Austin. How the Austin Police Department isn't under a consent decree after that atrocious action just this weekend is beyond me. But if I was a resident or a citizen in Austin, Texas, I would not feel safe about the Austin Police Department at this point. They've shown that they have members on their department that actively support white Nazi supremacy. This is how sick we get as Americans. We've always been sick, but now we're actually openly seeing the symptoms of the sickness. And it's not a good sight. Nobody likes seeing sickness when we see it. But now that you can see it, there has to be an operation, a procedure done to remove it. And there's cancerous elements in our country. They have to be removed. On January 6th, there were lawmakers members in the House and the United States Senate that orchestrated an attack, an insurrectionist coup against their own country, and they still sit in the House and Senate. Calling for their expulsion is the least that should be happening. There should be criminal referrals for each member's name who was mentioned just this weekend in the story. They should be referred to the Justice Department criminally. They should be labeled as insurrectionists in the House and in the Senate. A vote should be passed and a resolution declaring that these people were insurrectionist members of the United States House and the United States Senate. And that should be done immediately, now that we know names. There has to be consequences for this kind of bullshit. There has to be severe consequences for this type of bullshit. And that's the thing. People are not seeing any consequences. The government is not doing its job, according to me as a citizen in this country. And I'm sick of it. The fact that you have lawmakers who actively worked against their own country, wanting to dictate laws to me as a citizen, is a joke. It takes 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate to expel a member. We know that the Republican Party is an insurrectionist party at this point, and they won't vote for the expulsion of their members in either chamber. Like I said, the majority party in both houses should vote to refer matters to the Department of Justice on criminal referrals for the insurrection of the United States government by members, sitting members. That should happen immediately. And then you can work around some other things too. You can work to put their names in the official record as insurrectionist members of the House. They should no longer be considered on the House and Senate floor as Republican members of the Senate and the House. They should be considered as insurrectionist, seditionist members of the House and the Senate. Call them what the fuck they are. They're seditionist traitors to this country. These are no laughing matters. The fact that you have sitting House and Senate members who committed sedition against their own country. We saw what happened in Lafayette Square when the insane megalomaniac, narcissistic, racist president cleared out Lafayette Square for a photo op. He wanted to declare martial law and send troops into cities. You know, all the things that his supporters are hollering and screaming about that might happen now. Well, your dear beloved cult leader wanted to do it, but not in your location, just in places that didn't agree with your ideology. So why shouldn't it be not done now to you? See, if you support storming capitals when you lose elections, when you win elections, maybe the opposition should storm the Capitol too and vote to have a coup. Once you start this bullshit, you can't put it back in the bottle. For 220 years, we had a peaceful transition of power in this country. And lawmakers, activists, very wealthy individuals, and maybe the sitting president of the United States of America and his family had planning meetings at the Willard, D.C. Hotel where they planned out an assault on the United States Capitol. Everyone involved in those planning meetings, funding those planning meetings, funding individuals to get to D.C. on January 6th, everyone should be investigated. All their assets should be known about and prepared to be seized by the United States government. You know, if Russia does something to the United States government, the individuals involved, their assets are seized or frozen. You take an oath to defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. What we saw was domestic enemies, seditionists. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a seditionist, traitorous person who's sitting in the House of Representatives. Madison Cawthorn is a seditionist, traitorous person who's sitting in the House of Representatives. Lauren Babbitt, who was tweeting out the Speaker of the House's location to these megalomaniac terrorists and seditionists. How can you call that a safe working environment? The Speaker of the House, she was tweeting out her location while they were in the chamber. Paul Gazard, Mo Brooks. All of these people are traitors to their country. Their label of hiding behind the Republican Party should be stripped. You don't get to hide behind a national party when you commit sedition to the United States government. You can't play politics with that bullshit. You can't expect the citizenry to even have any loyalty to the country when the elected officials inside the country aren't loyal to their own country. You can wave whatever fucking flag you want. There's only one group of people who committed sedition and attempted a coup this year, and that's you fuckers. You know, they probably will get to the bottom of January 6th. But this country is so divided. The facts, well, facts are not important to half of the country. Reality is not important to half of the country. Sheer allegiance to a cult is the most important thing to half of this country. And to the other half, it's not. And so, at this point, things have gotten so far out of hand that nobody in this country is safe. If sitting members of the House and Senate can plan a coup against the duly elected incoming President of the United States of America, no citizen can feel safe in this country. This has devolved into a shit show. If they can be removed from the House and Senate, they should be removed immediately, if they can. You can't talk about law and order and then have, well, lawmakers planning assault on their own building amongst their own colleagues. You really think that that group who violently beat Officer Michael Fanone nearly to death, to the point where he wanted to draw his own firearm, but he didn't do that because he knew that they would kill him instantly if he did that, just the sheer mob. You really think they were coming in there to have a tea session with Nancy Pelosi, where they were going to shake Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's hand? Or Cori Bush, they were just going to pat on the back and say, "Nice job, Cori." We know what they were coming in there to do. Everybody that was involved that went there, the citizenry that went there, the insurrectionists, the seditionists, people, our own fellow citizens who are seditionists, they shouldn't be allowed to fly. If they have a list of those individual people who flew into the Capitol on January 5th, 4th, 3rd, whenever they got to the Capitol, and they flew out, all of those people should go on a do not fly, no fly list. They're terrorists in this country. You see, you have to put your foot down. Some things you can't go for. If you allow it once, it'll happen again. Their movement and their finances should be curtailed as much as possible. And we know that they'll whine and complain. It's persecution. No, it's justice. You can't try to overthrow an election and, well, murder duly elected representatives who aren't elected by you. You can't do that. But see, the type of people that would do that, they're the type of people that did George Floyd wrong, did Breonna Taylor wrong, did Walter Scott wrong. You see, they've been allowed to get away with it for so long. And now, well, they did it on a bigger stage. And I guarantee you next time they'll try it again on the same type of stage, or maybe even bigger. They're sick as shit. There's nothing that's going to change them. Deal with the problem. And if you cannot deal with the problem anymore as a country, then declare that to the citizenry. And then we'll make a choice as to what we should do as citizens in this country. But the time for bullshitting is over with.